Hello? Hello?
I've been waiting for you.
Made-for-TV horror is a dead form, being made obsolete by the onset of reality TV and the rise of streaming. There is something quaintly charming about the submedium, though, and its contribution to the genre. It even has its own titans like Dan Curtis and John Llewellyn Moxey, who mastered the form in the way that Wes Craven and John Carpenter did the big screen. Maybe the aspect that contributes to its charm the most is the restraint that smaller budgets and stricter content guidelines place on the filmmakers, forcing them to be creative in order to be successful. That's why it's a PG-13 movie is not an excuse for bad filmmaking. Networks breathed one last breath of air into the dying form during the third wave of slasher movies, hoping to capitalize on the success of Scream and reach those kids who grew up on Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? And no doubt the best of those was 1998's I've Been Waiting for You. I've been waiting to give you some spoilers, so you might want to go searching for this one first before you continue. Based very loosely on the Lois Duncan novel Gallows Hill, I've Been Waiting for You is clearly influenced by the look of the more famous adaptation of Duncan's novels, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Time has somehow been kinder to this film, though, and I think its heart and more coherent motives make it a superior film, in spite of its limitations. I've Been Waiting for You tells the story of Sarah Zoltane, played by Sarah Chalke in between her stints on Roseanne and Scrubs. Sarah is a California girl who reluctantly relocates to Massachusetts with her mother, played by the great Markie Post. The Zoltanes move into the Lancaster house, which of course they got for a steal. Everyone in Pinecrest knows that the house is haunted. 300 years earlier, the previous occupant, Sarah Lancaster, was dragged from her home and burned at the stake for witchcraft. It's this first act that I think is the weakest, as Sarah and her mother Rosemary are presented like the Gilmore Girls but without all the wit and charm.
Leave me alone in this place? Oh, please no. Anything but that. Are burgers okay? Veggie, for me. I'll take 60 song titles for 500, Alex.
And I wouldn't blame anyone for bowing out after 5 minutes of Sarah's insufferable teenage know-it-all act.
Are you nervous?
What? Being trapped inside a building full of kids I have absolutely nothing in common with?
Sarah runs afoul of the cool kids in class, including Kira, played by Soleil Moonfry, her cute boyfriend Eric, pretty girl Debbie, played by Sykes Maggie Lawson in her first role, dumb jock Kevin, and non-entity Missy. Yeah, don't get used to Missy. These characters seem purposely generic, which is a staple of Lois Duncan's YA fiction. And it's actually solid writing. You want your audience to latch onto tropes early, and then you start playing with them later on so that the audience thinks, oh, I thought, huh. Sarah does bond with Charlie, the magic shop employee, played by a young Ben Foster. Charlie immediately crushes on her, but she has her eye on Eric, Kira's boyfriend. Bold choice to make Sarah the protagonist of an Ariana Grande song, but, well, here we are. All of this is pretty routine, and honestly I wanted to check out the first time that I watched it during its initial airing, because the acting and the writing just felt so amateurish and cliched. And the director seemed intent on making everything a jump scare.
Starving. Oh, that won't be long.
But then the movie pulls out a mild twist that rights the ship and redeems itself when it turns out the kids aren't just paper-thin cliched mean kids who don't like Sarah because she's the new kid. They're actually shit scared because they are descendants of the crew that burned Sarah Lancaster at the stake, and there's a supposed curse that Lancaster's descendant will return and exact revenge on all 5 of them. And since Sarah dresses funny, is into Wicca, and totally nailed Eric's palm reading, some of them are convinced that she's the real deal. Kira is a keep your enemies close type, so she invites Sarah to the big house party at Eric's, provided Sarah goes along with a little prank. See, Kira broke into the school guidance counselor records, and she wants to feed the inside scoop to Sarah, who will do a palm reading routine that will blow everyone's minds with its accuracy. Sarah agrees against her better judgment, and the plan works pretty well until Kira gets bored and leaves Sarah hanging. Sarah continues, though, learning that Debbie has been sleeping with Eric behind Kira's back, politely rejecting Charlie, and freaking Misty out with a too real prediction about her mom.
Nobody could have known that, okay? Where did you really come from? What are you doing here?
Misty is so rattled, in fact, that she jumps in her car and leaves the party, only to be attacked by a masked assailant in a witch costume. Misty fights them off before literally getting scared to death. Blame falls on Sarah because she told Misty something that must have scared her to death. Sarah says she was just using the information Kira was giving her, and she seems genuinely shocked to find out that Kira wasn't on the other end at all. This makes Sarah even more of a pariah at school because everyone is convinced that she's a witch. So she gets garlic in her locker because, in addition to kids being bullies, they also have the added benefit of being irretrievably stupid.
Garlic, you morons! It's for vampires! Well, you don't believe me? Ask Buffy!
No, you don't want her. She's a woman.
I should note that the masked killer was an addition by the filmmakers and the network, as the original story was a simpler supernatural mystery. But with the success of I Know What You Did Last Summer, I'm sure the network wanted to hop on the bandwagon. And since we've added a serial killer mystery to the mix, now seems as good a time as any to mention the character actor Tom Dugan as the gang's history teacher Mr. Rankin. Rankin is dating Sarah's mom and giving serious Ted Buchanan.
It's just a game, do your own thing. Well, I'm not wired that way. And I'm here to tell you, it is not a game.
The kids break into Sarah's basement and use a legal department-approved talking board to contact the spirit world and confirm to their satisfaction that Sarah is indeed a witch. This leads to what for me is the creepiest moment in the film, as Sarah arrives back home and the kids skedaddle. But Sarah hears them running away and delivers an incredibly creepy grin before every film got mileage out of a creepy grinning character. Good work from Sarah Chalk on that one. Charlie gets creeped out while closing up shop, and for good reason. Someone locks him in and starts a fire. Charlie survives, and again Sarah takes the blame because she made an offhand remark about how he, as a water sign, should avoid fire. Charlie tells her that he is actually a secret descendant. Even though he's tried to keep his identity secret from the town, it was his great-grandfather who lit the match that burned Sarah Lancaster at the stake. That means that either the 5-person curse is wrong or someone in the group doesn't belong.
Something doesn't add up. Literally.
Eric is up next, getting attacked by the killer before being saved by his dog. I'll say this for the killer, they can move. They're like the elf in Gauntlet with that speed potion.
Elf now has extra shot power.
And it wouldn't be a late 90s slasher without a meta-analysis of the genre.
I mean, if any of us has a motive for picking off those guys, it's me.
As Charlie tells Sarah he's the most obvious choice to be the killer, but that makes him definitely not the killer. Unless that's what he wants people to think.
Except that makes me the most obvious choice again. Because I'm the least obvious choice, because I'm the most obvious choice. Well, you know what I mean.
And therein lies the rub when it comes to whodunits. And it's why Alfred Hitchcock avoided them. Either the narrative clues dictate it can only be one character and the mystery is spoiled, or the narrative clues say that it could be anybody, in which case the audience just has to sit there until they find out who the writer picked. Either way, the audience is stuck passively watching instead of investing themselves into the human drama. Anyway, Kevin is the next least useful member of the group, so he gets caught in a game of red light, green light with the witch before getting stuck into a locker. You see, he had a deadly fear of enclosed spaces, which Sarah knew from the palm reading.
It's a very dark, very tight place.
Yeah, the whole roof caved in. Dirt and rocks. I couldn't breathe.
It seems like maybe the screenwriter was running out of time because Debbie immediately gets a text from Eric right after, asking her to meet him at the clearing. Once there, Debbie nearly falls victim to the witch, getting her face sliced before making a narrow escape. Eric stops by to apologize to Sarah, telling her that everything has gotten out of hand. He also says it's over between him and Kara, so maybe they should get a coffee. Sarah agrees, but the whole thing is a ruse and the gang kidnaps her.
Get out! Get out! Get out!
Yeah, okay, they got me there. I really thought that was a face turn. Mr. Rankin drops Rosemary off, apologizing for ruining the date with his ranting.
But the rules are the rules. And what we teach her is what she takes out into the world when we're not there.
She gently breaks it off with him, but finds a mysterious witch claw on his car's floor. But of course, as far as we know, she has no context for what that is, because Sarah hasn't even told her what's going on. The gang plots to burn Sarah at the stake in order to prevent the revenge prophecy from coming true. And once Eric hears that out loud, he thinks it's a little extreme. Meanwhile, Rosemary is attacked by the witch, which is odd because she's not been involved in any of this. You know, unless someone is angry at Rosemary for some reason. Sarah tries to save herself through an exposition dump since we're nearing the end of the film. She researched the family trees of all the kids. Turns out Debbie and Charlie are cousins through her aunt. And the curse didn't originate with Sarah Lancaster at all, but her older sister Hannah, who married Virgil Rankin, whose lineage eventually begot Ted Rankin, the history teacher, and his bastard son Charlie.
Bastard! Bastard! Bastard!
The witch attacks, but it's a 4-on-1, so they're able to overtake him, and indeed, it was Charlie under the mask the whole time. He's angry about being abandoned and angry about being bullied, so it's the old Terror Train special. With everything wrapped up, Eric and Sarah start dating, making Sarah the most forgiving woman in history. But it turns out there's a motive to her madness.
I've been waiting for you.
She actually is a witch and a descendant of Sarah Lancaster. And there are 4 descendants remaining. Alright, for those keeping score at home, don't. This is not the type of film where you can square all the circles. Just acknowledge that you were watching a different movie than you thought you were, and your life will be a whole lot happier.
Yes?
Welcome home.
Obviously, tying up some loose ends would have been great, but I guess we don't need to know what happened with Ted Rankin, or the fates of the other 4 remaining characters. That's a different movie that never got made. If you're a fan of the Lois Duncan novel Gallows Hill, on which this is loosely based, you know that the screenwriter was probably handed the book and said, "Hey, I'm proud of you for getting this published and all, but I ain't reading all that." And then he did his own thing. The only real similarities are that there is a Sarah, there is a Kira, who is her stepsister in the novel, and there's a palm reading. The novel is more about Sarah's feelings of being an outcast based on rumor and innuendo. Everything else was probably a spec script that someone had laying around after Scream was a hit, and they got the go-ahead to work it in. So this is 2 movies. One about a nerdy teen who snaps and does the revenge-killing thing a la Prom Night, and the other about a girl struggling to overcome the prejudices of a small town and conservative high school. Those 2 stories just happen to be running concurrently. And yet, that's kind of what works for me, because there's nothing quite like this. This is like what would happen if the Skeet Ulrich character from Scream replaced the Skeet Ulrich character from The Craft, and everyone just had to run with it. I'm all for a good mashup. Most of the success and failure of the film rests on Sarah Chalke's shoulders, and she shows why she got scooped up as a series lead not long after this. I totally get why half the people who watch this would say she's annoying, and I totally get why the other half might say she's affable and charming. I tend to run the gamut on that one, as I start cold and just sort of warm up to her over the course of the movie. It's probably not a fair comparison, but while I didn't find her character all that likable, I did think that she was smarter than most final girls. Of course, she was also revealed to be a witch at the end, so it's pretty easy to come off as smarter when you're the one duping the other characters. Might be kind of an apples to oranges thing there. I guess I would call this a good starter film, for anyone who is not already into horror but might be horror curious. It is fondly remembered by a lot of millennials, and it does slot in nicely between Goosebumps and Scream on your horror journey. Just don't look for the deep exploration of intolerance, social isolation, and mob justice if you're coming from the book.
I get the picture.
Stay warm, stay safe, wash your hands, return your shopping carts, make good choices, and I'll see you next time.